As I start to do my trauma work, I realize how much my own biology is holding me back.
I'm Kai Roberts-Fu, and I am here today with Dr. Aimie Apigian, the author of The Biology of Trauma. And I'm so excited to be here with you today. We're going to talk about your book and your work and why it is so important for trauma survivors. Welcome.
Thank you. It's really good to be here.
The Biology of Trauma incorporates a new and unique approach with the physiology of trauma. Can you tell me how that differs from some of the other science-backed treatments that are out there like EMDR and ART, and how that's going to be so helpful for trauma survivors?
Absolutely. And thank you for asking that, because we still need to have a conversation about what is trauma, because then that guides, well, what do we do about it?
Mm-hmm.
If we are still seeing trauma as something that happened to us, then we're going to be looking for, well, what can I do about that thing that happened to me? Versus if we now see it as it just was an inner experience of my body, of my physiology, had nothing to do with that outside of me. It happened inside of me. My body had an experience. My physiology had certain changes that made that be a trauma response.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now that means that I want to repair the changes in my physiology. It won't just be, I need to change that memory. I need to reframe the story. I need a different perspective. But that will happen as part of the process. But now we know that we need to involve the physiology and understand that we need to change our biological response to those memories, along with whatever modality that it is that we're using. The biology of trauma is just a lens, it's a perspective that can be used with EMDR, with whatever modality you're using, because it's incorporating the physiology and the biology, not just trying to process a memory.
Can you tell a little bit about how you came to these conclusions? You're a physician. So how did the biology of trauma come into what you're doing now?
The biology of trauma really originated when I went through the largest grief and loss of my life. And 1 month later, my body crashed physically and I could not get out of bed. They diagnosed me with chronic fatigue syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Then a few months later, we discovered autoimmunity. I was clear on what had precipitated that. The medical field did not appreciate that emotional component. But as I'm looking at, I have chronic fatigue syndrome now. I don't even know why. They don't know why. I have autoimmunity. What can I do about it? I know that to have the most healing possible, I am going to need to do trauma work along with these other things. It has to be both. As I start to do my trauma work, I realize how much my own biology is holding me back. I try to do the therapy. I try to do the personal development. And it's like I keep hitting this ceiling effect where it's like my body just, it can't process, it can't integrate, it can't participate to the degree that I know that I need to have this resolution. And that was the first clue for me that this brain inflammation, this brain fog is an inner biological response that's happening, but that's keeping me back from the healing that I want. So it won't just be enough to learn the somatic work or the parts work or do the EMDR or do all the stuff that I was trying to do. I also needed to bring in the biology so that I could have the biology that would support the level of healing that I was wanting.
So that's actually good news for people who maybe aren't
great
finding
news.
the relief they need with talk therapy and yoga. And there are always more opportunities, more things to try.
Exactly. So the way that I look at it now, I'm always looking at what is a person doing on the mind level? What are they doing at the body or somatic level? And what are they doing at the biology level? Because for a person to have the most complete healing that they could, they need to do all three levels. If they neglect one of those levels, they will continue to be held back in some way.
In your book, you talk about the critical line of overwhelm. And this was revolutionary for me when I look at my life and the days when I could get through difficult things easily, and then the days when the smallest thing I would just floor me. Talk, please, a little bit about the critical line of overwhelm for our audience.
The critical line of overwhelm really is then the core concept that defines what will be a stress for us and what will put us into overwhelm. Now, when I use the word overwhelm, it is the physiology of the trauma response. Very different physiology than the stress response, which is why we need to know our critical line of overwhelm, because we want to be able to stay in stress and not cross that line to go into overwhelm.
I have to ask, why would we want to stay in stress? I mean, obviously you wouldn't want to go in overwhelm, but can you define stress as you're using it here to say why that's the better place to be?
That seems so counterintuitive to what we've been taught. Stress has gotten a bad rep. Stress is considered bad. It's not bad. It's great. And in fact, we are supposed to experience some stress every day because that's how we grow. Even if we think about it in terms of our physical health, we see this principle play out. If we want to be healthy, have healthy muscles, we need to use those muscles. Thus, we have gyms where we go and we stress our muscles because that's how we grow. If we never stressed our muscles, they would become weak, puny, unhealthy. So stress is not a bad thing, but what we've gotten wrong is we've called overwhelm stress. We've not had a different word for it. So we've used the terminology that we know. We might even use chronic stress. Oh, chronic stress is bad. There's a stress physiology and there's the overwhelm physiology. There's only those two. So even when we use the word chronic stress, I'm still leaning in being like, but what do you mean by that? Because if you're now in a place that it feels heavy, exhausted, you're having to push through to just get through, that is no longer stress. That is this overwhelm physiology. That is the trauma physiology. It's a trauma response to shut things down or dim things down to slow us down. It's our way of protecting our body, of surviving our hard experiences, is actually not staying up in that high energy. I'm going to do something. I'm going to run. I'm going to fight. It's a lot of energy. And the trauma response or overwhelm is how our body says, I'm going to protect you by slowing you down. Our whole terminology needs to change, which is why then when we come back to this idea of the critical line of overwhelm, you've been able to notice the difference. And that difference can be simplified to, when did we go from high energy, I can solve a problem, it's figure outable, I can do this, I can figure this out, to I don't care anymore. I'm going to give up. I'm going to give in. I'm just going to eat my bowl of ice cream and feel sorry for myself. And yes, I've done that.
Who hasn't? That's really helpful. And I'm somebody who likes to be doing and accomplishing. And people are like, oh, you shouldn't do so much. You're stressing yourself out. And I'm like, no, that's what gets me jazzed. Knowing that there's good stress allows me to push back a little on the people for whom inner peace is even more important than getting things done. And there are people for whom that is the most important part. And for me, it's getting things done. And now that I know the right kind of stress is not necessarily a bad thing, could be a good thing, that's really helpful.
It is. And here's what I would want people to know is everyone has their own set point of how much stress they can hold and live with and not go into overwhelm. And it's different for every person. So somebody might look at you and all that you do, and they're thinking, I could never hold that much stress. That would put me into overwhelm. So they're telling you the advice that they really would be giving themselves. But your set point is different than their set point. You can live with that much stress and you can use it for accomplishing your life purpose. That's what we use our stress for, is living our life purpose. Everyone has their own critical line of overwhelm. Everyone needs to know their own critical line of overwhelm so that they can manage their own internal states, know how much stress they can hold and stay within that zone, and avoid the overwhelm as much as possible.